Greetings, and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast that can officially add a JRPG classic to its list of games completed in 2025. Welcome to the podcast, I'm David Lloyd, and this episode is a retrospective of our first RPG Club selection of 2025, Dragon Quest III, the 2D HD remake. For the past few months, or a couple months I guess, folks in our Discord have been playing the remake of Dragon Quest III together, providing assistance, sharing stories, and motivating each other to take down the evil Baramos and the many different versions of him throughout the game. This is a retrospective, so I guess it goes without saying that many spoilers will be spoiled, so be warned. Joining us for this retrospective is most of the crew from the last DQ3 episode, starting with someone who just dusted off his old 3DS. It's Rich.
It's technically not my 3DS, it's my girlfriend's, but I did install custom firmware on it, so it's mine now.
Yeah, that's right. Ownership is what, 3/10 of the law or something? What's the saying there?
Sure.
So it's just like my version. What was it? I guess it was Final Fantasy IX. Technically, Final Fantasy IX may have been purchased by someone I know, but I've owned it for the past 30 years, and so technically, I think it's mine now. So. Yeah, and also joining us, tearing himself away from the visual splendor of DQ3 for an hour to chat with us about the game, it's Will.
Hey, David, thanks for having me back.
Oh, I'm glad to have you back. It's funny, a lot of our chatting in the Discord through the game was for the visual splendor that is this 2D HD remake.
So, it is a very pretty game.
It is. So looking forward to talking about that some more. And speaking of the 3DS, he just may be the biggest fan of the platform. It's Daniel.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Oh, well, we called him the greatest 3DS fan, and he immediately disconnected out in a fit of anger. That's okay. Daniel will be back, I'm sure, but I guess we'll start off without him for a minute and talk about, this is the Dragon Quest III remake that I guess this is a good time to even plug the Discord a bit too, because the Thirsty Mage has a Discord channel. We've got plenty of great folks in there that we have some great conversations about RPGs, and it's such a positive place to be that I got the idea. I guess we've dabbled with it in the past before, but we actually set up an RPG club. I just figure, in my experience, there's always times where you're playing certain RPGs that maybe you just didn't get over the hump with a certain game, or you just need that little extra bit of motivation. So when you get, I think we had about 8 to 12 people or so playing throughout the past 2 months. And yeah, when you've got a buddy who's discussing things with you that maybe there's that tricky boss that just is hard to get past, and you just need to know that little trick to get past them, or you're not feeling it one day, and you just kind of feel that motivation to plow on through, and then you end up realizing you're glad you did it so you could finish it. So that's what the RPG Club is for. So we got through our first one of the year, and I know we'll be starting a second one up shortly here for Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia Echoes. And so if you jump onto our Discord now, I don't think we've even technically started, so now's the perfect time to get there. So go to thethirstymage.com and you can click on the Discord and join up. No cost or anything like that. Just pop in and have some fun. The only thing is we keep it nice and friendly, so just keep that in mind. But we've got Daniel back now. We convinced him to come back, even though he must have been completely offended by his fandom of 3DS. But Daniel,
no, I'm completely yeah. It's probably my favorite Nintendo system ever. Sort of thing. That and the Switch, but I just like the design of the 3DS and the clamshell and the dual screen and all that. And It has Codename Steam, so clearly
Yeah.
the best system. I'm not even being ironic. I love that game. The
Um,
best Fire Emblem game.
the only platform that has Codenamed Steam, I'm pretty sure, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. So there you
Don't
go.
even think they were represented in Smash Brothers.
Yeah, there you go. What's that? Isn't there like a robot Abraham Lincoln or something in that one?
Yeah. Oh, dude, that game goes places. Like, you have giant. It's not even a robot. It's a mecha Abraham Lincoln battling a giant Cthulhu monster. It is just insane the places that game goes.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
It happens. It happens. I think basically in the second or third mission, like where it just that game. Oh, if you want to do an episode on that game, I'm here for it. And
Yeah.
Etrian Odyssey and all that.
Just one?
Yeah.
I
Day,
mean,
maybe.
yeah.
But yeah, we're here to talk about Dragon Quest III. So we've all finished the game, and we had an episode about the first little bit of it a few weeks, or I guess it was a couple of months ago at this point. So if you want to catch that first before listening to that one, you can. But yeah, we're going to do some overall thoughts on the game, talk about some of our, some of the fun moments. There's so many great moments in DQ3. That come across really well, so we're gonna have some fun time, having a chat about it. But I think we're going to just start with kind of an overall thoughts on the game, and maybe Rich, do you want to start us off? Now that you've finished Dragon Quest III, you've defeated the 12 different versions of Baramos that seem to just keep on popping up. If it isn't his bones or his skin, I'm pretty sure. We ended up fighting his farts at some point, but
Yeah.
what's your overall feelings leaving when you finally got out of Alfgard?
Oh man, well, it was pretty fun, but it kind of I don't know, overstayed its welcome a little bit. I think by the time I defeated Baramos the first time, which I thought would be the last time,
Oh, sweet summer
then
child.
yeah, I was kind of ready for the game to be over by then. I had just turned on Draki mode and said like, well, I've seen the entire world map. There's nothing left to do, nothing left to see. Time to go beat the final boss. And then the game said, nope, there's a whole other world.
Yep.
So I kind of had to just power through the that second world in Draki mode, and I did it, but it was definitely not as fun as it was when I started.
Yeah, I definitely would agree that I saw much more of the first world than I did of Alfgard for sure.
Yeah.
Will, how about you? What's your take from Dragon Quest III?
Number one, I thought it was really interesting when we talked about it last time, and you said that it was developed by Chunsoft and published by Square, or published by Enix.
Enix, yep.
And I was like, yeah, that is something that used to happen a lot back then, right? Is they would call in sort of like pinch hitters to do development and then publish it under their own banner. And I think they did a really good job when you consider what era it's from. And it is a very long game, even the remake, even with Draki mode. But if you think about the era that it came out in and the system that it was published on, that would have been so mind-blowing at the time to have this entire other map that's really well fleshed out pop up. I did find it humorous though that everywhere you went, they're like, this place is a stagnant pit of misery. And I was just looking at their like gilded homes with their shining windows and their perfectly appointed fireplaces. And I was like, I used to live in Chicago. I don't know if you understand how good you have it here. This is a really nice place. What are the property values like? I'd move in down here.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I did enjoy it. The only main thing I have to say is that bird, man, that bird needs to move it.
That was half the game.
Half the game was just flying from one location. I only flew with the bird one time, and that was half the game.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly slow-moving bird. I don't think that is a migratory species. I don't even think it's supposed to be able to take flight. I think that it was a dodo that just really believed in itself.
I loaded up the Game Boy Color version just to see if the bird's not as slow in the original ones as it is now, and I don't. That was sort of a problem I had with this version, is it is a lot slower and things are made a bit bigger, so it does take a lot longer to get to places compared to the previous ones.
Well, getting that teleport, as soon as teleport became available, I was abusing that like nobody's business. Like, it's like, I'm not walking anymore. Screw this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that was kind of my takeaway too. Is in the sense of like it's amazing that this is an 8-bit RPG. Like before we started playing, I actually played probably about a third, I guess, of DQ3 on the Game Boy Color, and playing that version, which is again even a little more basic than like the original NES version, which goes for about like $202 to $300 now if you want the cartridge, but. Yeah, it's just I feel like I guess Art Dink is the developer of this one. I don't know how much free range they had from Square Enix to kind of create their own version of the game, or if there was a lot of direction from Square in that regard. But whoever was in charge definitely deserves a raise, because I feel like they were able to still maintain that essence or that spirit of what a 8-bit RPG feels like, but make it palatable anyway. Like it's still not quite on the level of say like a modern RPG. Like I don't think it quite hit the heights of something like an Octopath Traveler 2. But it got to Octopath Traveler 1 territory. I'll say that, I guess. It was pretty solid. Like there's things that could have been improved, but it's still as like as an experience goes, I had a fun time with it. So
absolutely, I think it's still an eminently playable game, and I think they did a really good job on it as far as faithful remakes go. Could they have like switched more up and maybe tightened the pacing in certain places and sort of balanced out the challenge? I think they could have, absolutely. But I would still say that this is a really enjoyable game, and I would think I haven't played any of the other versions of Dragon Quest 3, but I would feel just intuitively that this would be the go-to from now on.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, I think the only things missing from the previous versions are the I forget the word for it, like the Perichi or whatever. They had this sort of like mini board game stuff you could do.
Oh yeah,
yep. Yeah, that's the only thing that's been taken away. But all the extra stuff added, like the monster wrangling and that. But the problem with Dragon Quest, especially 3 in general, is it's so revered in Japan. They have to sort of be careful how many changes they make to it, because you're going to get a big, like, Dragon Quest is a series that's always going to sell the most in Japan, and if they make any major changes, and they have a possibility of upsetting their sort of core audience for it. But there was a point with Dragon Quest 9, I think, was going to be a real-time combat game, and just the backlash was so big. They're like, no, we're just going to, it'll be turn-based, don't worry, we're not going to change anything.
Yeah, well, even Legend of Heroes, I know when they first started talking about the latest one adding in action-based combat, I know a lot of people got their backs up already, because it's like, well, you're going to mess with greatness. Like, why are you changing up the battle system? So yeah, there's always, it's funny, like it depends on the culture or the country, or it depends on even the age of the person playing the game. Like there's really no way to please everybody. So if you kind of do what you can, and some games they just maybe point out, they try to get it to one core audience, or some are trying to like please as many as they can. But whatever they wanted to do when they made the decision, I feel like I feel like there was enough compromises that everyone should be pleased, even though maybe it's not exactly maybe what everybody wants. But Rich,
the good thing about
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, the good thing about just the core game in general, you don't like, there is a lot of quality of life upgrades in this, but even then you don't really need to do a lot. Like, you can still just the auto battle mode is pretty smart, and you can just leave that to run itself to quickly grind through battles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was a super, especially Dragon Quest combat in general. It's not like it's a Final Fantasy where you're targeting affinity types and all that. It is, the combat's probably even more basic than that of Pokemon.
Oh yeah, well, it's more basic than even just like the original Final Fantasy on NES, because at least you could target like specific characters, where in this one you're just targeting like groups of characters and kind of hoping that the computer gives you does it right for you, or gives you a break or whatever. So
I
You
think
never
if the
did get that
combat,
boomerang, huh, David?
oh man, I did get a boomerang. It was, by the time I got it, I ended up getting like other weapons. So like I really missed. I blew my window on that one for sure.
The Metal Wing boomerang you can get through the monster trials is just the best weapon to just destroy groups of enemies.
Now I did play the majority of the game wearing a cat suit. My ninja master. I don't know. Like I found some cat suit along the way somewhere, and it just happened to always be the best armor until like almost the very end of the game. So, my apologies to Tifa, who had to wear a cat suit the entire game. But
Sure.
yeah.
It wasn't an active choice, not at all, David. You had to do it. No.
I kept hitting the button that automatically equipped things, and it just kept leaving it on. Now, was it the best one in hindsight? I don't know, but the computer didn't want to take it off, so can't argue with it. I did laugh at there was one. So the majority of like talking and cutscenes and stuff, the cat suit was always on, except there was one scene. I think it might have been when the Zuma or Zoma, wherever, first appears. I think the cat suit was off because I don't know if that was like a cutscene or something, but it went to the character's like normal clothing. So I don't. It was, and that was the only cutscene in the game that did that. So I don't know what happened there, but it was a good chuckle for me. Rich, is there anything specific about that happened throughout the game that you're going to remember this years from now, and maybe either if it's fondly or angrily or just for comedic value?
oh boy, like a specific story moment or
Well, just anything. Like what one day when you're sitting around on the patio having a beer. Is there something that you're gonna just gonna pop in your head one day and just be like, oh, I remember that time I played DQ3 and this happened?
boy, I can't say like any of the individual moments were that memorable. Um, I don't know. I think I was just trying to get through it pretty quickly towards the end. Maybe if the combat were a little bit more engaging, I might have stayed a little more focused on it, put more attention into it. But yeah, it just got a little bit old, and so after a certain point, I kind of stopped paying too much attention.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing. The one bad thing with Draki mode, because I was with you. By the time I got to the end, I'm like, I'm not replaying any of these matches, so I'm just gonna throw her into Draki mode and put the head down and get through it.
Yeah,
So it definitely makes the battles less memorable because I was just kind of tuning out for some of them.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of had the feeling that that I had done something wrong, particularly with leveling my hero
Yeah.
most of the game, because after a certain point, he is just pretty weak. Even with really strong equipment and everything, he just wasn't doing that much damage. I don't know if you guys had that experience too, if that's intended or what, but yeah,
Yep.
so that was a little bit frustrating.
How about you, Dan? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the problem with the hero leveling, I think he does scale a lot better stats wise than the other characters, but because he can't do the character reset, which when you reset your when the other party members reset, their stats just get halved. So they're still starting from a stronger level anyway, and then they level back up. Whereas the main hero can't do that. So you can, if you're like me, I think I reset some of the characters 4 times.
Wow.
He's not the main hero is not going to be as strong. But the other problem is towards the end, it does become like it has a pretty high encounter rate.
Yeah, for
Especially going
sure.
through the last dungeon, you're like, I'm enjoying it, but you get that feeling when you're at the end of a game and you just want to finish it. But
Yeah.
then it just keeps throwing constant random battles at you, and you're like, I don't care. These guys will take literally one hit, go away. Which is why
Here's
stuff like Earthbound has you instant win battles like that.
Yeah, here's something I'll remember, David. Those floor tiles towards the end where you got to rotate your controller.
Yeah.
Oh,
Especially some of the ones in that final dungeon. Man, I didn't want to rotate my controller. I just wanted to throw it out the window.
Yeah.
I literally had it drawn on the whiteboard. I have a whiteboard in my basement,
Yeah.
like right above my video games.
Yeah.
And I literally had 2 diagrams of the types of tiles and how to turn my controller so I could use it normally.
Yeah,
And that was more prevalent than I would have preferred.
yeah,
I had a
yeah,
picture of that on my cell phone. I had my cell phone in my right hand, and I was just walking with the left, and I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be hitting here? Because I've fallen off this level 3 times, and it's not happening again.
yeah.
How about you, Will? Is there anything in particular that's going to stick out for you for DQ3?
As far as the game itself goes, I don't think that it does anything that I've never seen before. It comes too late in my life and too late in my gaming life for it to be novel in that way, where particular things stand out. I would say some things like what Daniel was talking about last time, the little side stories. Some of those side stories were memorable to me.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the overall game itself, I'm just going to remember the general experience, how well done I think the remake was, and how much I enjoyed doing it as a JRPG book club. This is not the first time I've done a JRPG book club. It's actually my second. And I think it's a lot of fun to play through a game this way with other people. And the other thing I would say, though, is I kind of shot myself in the foot in terms of making the game memorable because of the way I went about playing it, which is that I used Draki mode and auto battle a lot, and it was great for pacing the game out and getting through it in a manageable amount of time. But also, it has the same problem that you end up with when you play anything on easy mode, which is that you don't deeply engage with the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just literally having it auto battle for me, and it's sped up and everything like that. So I couldn't get engaged with the mechanics because I wasn't using them. So it cuts away an entire layer of the game that can be memorable. So now what's memorable to me is the experience of playing through it with you guys and the other people in the Discord. The presentation will be memorable to me for quite a while because I think it's a stunning game. I know I've been beating that drum a little bit excessively, but I do think that they really nailed that. And then just little side stories here and there. I don't know how spoilery we want to get. We talked about some of them last time as well, but I did really enjoy seeing an early version of a ghost ship, which is obviously a JRPG trope, an early version of an underworld, which is a JRPG trope, an early version of a last minute final boss swap where it's like, oh, you think Baramos is the boss? No, no, no. Um, all of that kind of stuff where it stood out, and being incredibly disappointed when I got what is this game's version of an airship, which is normally a highlight of a game. In this one, I
Yeah.
felt like I was being punished.
Yeah.
So all of that stuff, I think is really cool. Kind of trying to view it through the context of when the game came out, while sitting here playing it in 2025, but thinking about what would this have been like? Why is this game so revered? Even though some of that stuff now is a real slog to trudge through at times, I really get why the game is so appreciated. And again, it's super impressive that this any version of this was fully playable on a Nintendo cartridge. That is
Mm.
a lot of game to squeeze into that kind of compressed storage space.
Yeah. It was very late in the NES lifespan, I think. So I
It
get
was the
it's
80.
upgraded cartridges.
yeah.
Well, it came out in '88, so it was only a year after Final Fantasy had sort of the first Final Fantasy had come out. So you get and this is it's the third Dragon Quest, so there's still 1 and 2 before this that are a lot more basic than this. Like Dragon Quest 1, you've only got one selectable character, and it
It's
sort
much
of
smaller world too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into spoilers because because there is still the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD remakes coming out,
Right.
which
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
will carry on from this because they have said if you've played 3, there's going to be extra stuff that carries on, and also because I think it's sort of common knowledge anyway that 3 is basically a prequel to 1 and 2.
Yeah,
I knew
well,
that before starting. Yeah.
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 Well, they said that's because a lot of people asked why did you do 3, and they said, well, it's like chronologically it's the first one, so that's
And
it's one
and
of the more
the
revered
most
ones
popular.
too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it just kind of worked in their favor that way. But well, and again, another reason why the next game is going to be a combination of 1 and 2 in one cartridge. So
Yeah.
Oh, not like what one's probably not even a 12-hour RPG. I don't think.
not
There's
on
no
Draki
way
mode.
they could.
Oh, in Draki mode, that thing's going to be 3 hours long.
Yeah.
There is no way they could sell them individually.
No, not for the price they want. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. How about you, Daniel? Any big memories that you'll have from playing
um,
DQ3?
so it's like, I don't know if it's just my memory being shot in general, but like because I've finished it on the Game Boy Color, but I couldn't remember a lot of the story beats, and I had to go back just to double check that they were still there. But I think how spoilery do we want to get with the
It's a
story stuff?
retrospective.
Okay,
Everything's
cool.
yeah.
Okay, I
I know you like that
complete
Ortega thing at the end, right?
yeah, I completely sort of forgot that had happened, and then as because Dragon Quest games are they sort of stealthily come across as quite light in story until it sort of all hits you at the end, and then once you get that Ortega stuff, it's like, oh, that's what the story's been about. Because when you talk to people in towns, it's all about Ortega, and you're sort of following him, but you don't realize it that you're following his path through the world. And then it's almost a bit heartbreaking that you sort of catch up to him just as he dies, and it's like if you'd been 5 minutes earlier or something, you could have stopped that from happening. And it just, it's something that they're very good at doing with Dragon Quest, these sort of very bittersweet, somber storylines. That, this happy Akira Toriyama art, and then, oh no, there's death, people have died, this is quite brutal.
Well, and
it just, yeah,
they kind of teased that Ortega died in the
yeah,
volcano, because I remember they were talking about like the enemy that was there was like, oh, you look just like the guy I threw in the lava or whatever. And so they kind of teased to a certain extent that was kind of the end of Ortega's path. But then, yeah, you get to Alifgard when you pass through the underworld, and then they're still talking about Ortega down there, and you're like, oh, I'm
yeah, but you
thinking,
still have the
yeah,
mindset like, oh, he's probably already dead, whatever, he's already done
yeah,
his stuff, he's long gone or whatever. But then it's like, no, he's still here, and I've just missed him. And then when he's like, you catch up to him, and he's like, he can't talk, he can't see or hear, so he doesn't know that his child is there with him
yeah,
at the end. And it's like, oh,
yeah. Yeah, it was pretty heartbreaking. But I mean, it's one of those like you could look at it half full or half empty in the sense of like, well, at least he was there for his dad when he died.
yeah,
He gave him that solace that he was looking for with holding his hand. So he didn't die alone, which is
yeah,
all right. So
I do think it's an interesting choice that he's not just blind, but he's also deaf. And it's like
yeah,
it's just like, no, you cannot tell him that you're his father or
yeah.
that he's your father. You can't go like
Morse code
miracle
not
worker and
invented,
stuff. Yeah,
unfortunately. Like
exactly.
just tap his palm. I'm your son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and just the fact that this was in an 8-bit 1980s RPG as well, like.
Yeah.
Just imagine if I'd played that at the time, that would have been just so mind blowing, because you come from playing stuff like Contra and more simple storyline games, and then you're
Yeah.
playing this, and it's like, as a what I would have been 10 if this came out but when this came out in the West, it's like that would have hit hard.
Yeah. Well, I think Ninja Gaiden would have had like the most story
Yeah,
for an NES game sort of thing, and even then, that's just cutscenes between missions and stuff. So I know for me, my biggest memory is going to be the one of the quests. So you have to, for one of the orbs, you have to build a town
Yes.
in order. So you have to.
Mm.
So I didn't have a merchant. So and this is one of the benefits of being in the Discord, was that someone had mentioned that it takes a little while to get that town built. So maybe go grab a merchant now, drop them off, and let them kind of do their thing while you're playing the rest of the game. So I was doing that. I went and recruited a merchant and created my own, and my daughter was next to me, so I thought it'd be funny if I named the person after my daughter. and so she thought that was funny, and she's usually around when I'm playing, and so I'm kind of seeing what's going on with the town. I'm like, oh look, your character built this town square thing. Oh, they're building this, they're building that, and then by the time we got to the point where the town was calling her a tyrant, I was like barreling laughing because I'm just like, your character that's your namesake uh, is ruining your reputation. It's the drunk on power, and then to see them end up in jail at the end, it was just hilarious. To see this town that was named after my daughter rise up and dethrone the would be king or queen, I guess she was, of this town, and then to pick up, I think the orb was like stashed under something behind the throne that was like toppled by the citizens, which was like that whole storyline, I think, was the funniest thing for me in the game.
And it gives you an excuse the next time she asks for a dessert or something like that. You can be like, no, you
Yeah.
corrupt, governess. Look what you did to that town. You can't
Yeah.
have any ice cream.
That's right. You have a lifetime to make up for the town that you ruined.
Yeah.
No, you can't go with your friends. You're grounded for indenturing an entire town of people. Yeah, there's the story again, like you said, Daniel, with that story. It was kind of like you get bits and pieces here and there. I think that's kind of like a Dragon Quest staple, though, is that it's not necessarily in your face. I feel like Dragon Quest 11 was like the first Dragon Quest game where it was very not necessarily the first, but they kind of lean into the story more there. Like I'm kind of more used to kind of being on the periphery of getting story stuff.
Yeah, I think,
man.
well, it's the next two, 4 and 5. They're very heavy on the story, I think, and they both do it in different ways. Like 5, you're basically playing this one character throughout his whole life, and it is quite upfront story, so you sort of know what's going on all the way through. In 4's interesting the way they do it. It's separated into chapters, and each chapter you're playing as a different member of the party, and in the final chapters about them all coming together to fight the big evil that's going on. God, I hope that they get HD remakes, because 4 and 5 are just two of the best. Like 5 is still that's still the best Dragon Quest.
Didn't the merchant character from 4 become like a huge favorite in Japan? Like,
Yep.
isn't he sort of like legend there now?
Yeah, Torneko. So Torneko, he basically started the Mystery Dungeon series. Because I think that was and you talk about like the first like Dragon Quest games made by Chunsoft, and then Chunsoft made the Mystery Dungeon games, which is basically what they do now.
Yeah.
These days. So even though they're not involved with Dragon Quest anymore, it's sort of responsible for where they are now. But yeah, Torneko is probably 1, 2, and 3 don't really have set established characters, but yeah, he'd probably be the biggest, most well-known character from the early ones.
Yeah, it's almost like a unnamed protagonist, really. Like, I mean, because you could choose any name other than Erdrick, apparently, which is hilarious. Won't let you pick that, but it's funny. It's good that the sales are really strong. It'll be interesting to see what happens with 1/2 if it sells as well. I feel like there's no reason it shouldn't, other than maybe if there's something else going on in the like, if it goes up against another big hitter and our pockets are a little less full than they are. But if there's no reason to believe that if 1 and 2 does well, that they just won't continue on. Why not remake more Dragon Quests if it works out? Like, it's just, I don't know, it feels like Square's kind of got this money pit of like, the 2D HD works. Like, they sold, like Octopath sold well. It looked fantastic. I mean, a lot of Octopath's popularity to me, or the reason I loved it so much, was more the battle system. Like, I really hope that, if we've seen our last Octopath, that they at least put that in a new franchise, or give it another go, because I feel like it's just too good not to see another one like that. But
I still, when the Switch reveal presentation happened, like 8 years ago or whatever, and we first saw Octopath, I still remember being floored by just like, what is this? This is just the most amazing looking direction for an RPG to go in ages. Because up until then, the whole thing is, if they're going to remake it, it's just going to be like a 3D polygon sort of thing. But then Square Enix proved, no, you can do stuff that still looks like, what's the word? It looks like how we remember it looking like.
Yeah.
But then Square Enix has got, like, what is it? The Romancing Saga remakes, the Star Ocean remakes. They've got all these sort of different directions that they can go in for remaking their old sprite-based games, and each of them sort of brings its own sort of flair and fun.
Well, I really like the look of what was that one that they just, the Star Ocean, was that Second Story that they just made?
Second Story.
That looked fantastic.
Yeah. That had a great visual style.
It wasn't classed as HD 2D, but it was very close to it.
I would love to see them, and I know they won't do this, but I would love to see them redo Xenogears in the style of Star Ocean Second Story, because that game already basically has that same style with the pixel sprites and the 3D background. But I'm not sick of the HD 2D. I know some people criticize it and they're like, oh, it's overused. That's done. I'm like, I could take another 8 of these games. Like, I really enjoy pixel art aesthetic, and I really enjoy the high fidelity version of it. I think it looks great.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that overplayed, is it? There's the 2 Octopath games, Triangle Strategy, Live Alive, and this. So it's not,
No, well, in Triangle Strategy, I don't know if I would even put that in the same category, because it's a little bit different. It's more like isometric. I don't know. Like, it doesn't feel quite the same. Like, I know it kind of looks the same, but it still feels a little different. But even in this one, the pixel characters are more. They're not as pixely or whatever as the other ones. They're different sprites.
Yeah.
I almost prefer the other, like the Octopath sprites, to these ones myself. But
you can definitely see the styles evolved since they first started using it.
Yeah, I'm curious, Rich. You're a fellow original Final Fantasy fan, Rich. Have you played the pixel remasters of any of those yet?
No, I haven't played any of the NES Final Fantasies, actually. Only Super Nintendo.
Oh, I thought, okay. Yeah. Because I was curious, like with the pixel, because that's kind of like two competing. It's funny that they're like Final Fantasies going with like the pixel remaster route, and then now we got DQ going like the 2D HD route. And I'm curious what people's because I would say the pixel remaster is more faithful to the originals, in the sense that it's almost like a more high resolution pixel art, but whereas the 2D HD is kind of like a reimagining it with this new art style. And I'm curious, like, I don't know if you guys have any feelings on, if there's a preferred route, or if it might even be a good thing that they're going in these different directions, so that it doesn't become too stale, either one.
I think that's it for me. It's like, you don't want to, because there are some people who will say they're sick of HD 2D, but as long as they don't flood the market with it, because I think a lot of people think it's quite easy to do, but it's clearly not. There's a lot, like, you look at the Dragon Quest, just how gorgeous some of those towns look. This isn't stuff that they can bang out in 6 months. This is a lot of work that goes into doing these remakes, which is why we're not seeing it a lot. Like, I would like to see them try and do like Secret of Mana in this style, just to see how actiony game works. With this art style, or
Final
Illusion
Fantasy
of Time, or
6
something.
would be amazing. I would love to see a fully HD 2D Final Fantasy 6.
Because part of the pixel remaster is HD 2D, the opera scene.
Just the opera scene, and it's not done as well as the other HD 2D stuff.
No, I feel like they still try, like, it's still more 2D than
Yeah.
HD. Like it's still flat. Like it still feels a little flat, like where it's kind of got the pixel sprites there, but it's not quite on the same level. I
Oh,
know,
just to
Will, you had mentioned like you liked a lot some of the lighting effects that I feel like they had in this game, but maybe wasn't necessarily happening in like the Octopath games.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's the kind of stuff that will really differentiate a visual style. You can take, and you see this in full 3D games too, where just the lighting engine and the particle effects can make a massive difference. If we're to compare it to, say, something that's going on right now, some people are complaining about the flat look of Monster Hunter Wilds. And I think it's generally a concession to make it a contiguous open world. But it's true that the texture work, the particle work, and the lighting is not up to the standards of, say, uh, even the PC version of Rise, or definitely World back on PS4. And Wilds is the new big thing, right? And I think that you see it's not a polygon difference really. It's not a animation difference. It's just a difference of how much does the lighting effect, enhance an image. Or it's like if you get a good colorist and a good inker on a piece of art for a comic book, it can make a world of difference versus just, cell shading it or something like that. And I think that you can take something that has a relatively simple fidelity in terms of its actual like pixel content and really jazz it up a lot. I don't mean to use young people slang, but I want the show to be relatable to Gen Z as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, you can really jazz it up a lot by adding just lighting and particle effects that give a sense of grounded realism to this very retro experience. And I think it really bridges those two worlds very well. It does for me anyway, and it may be a generational thing, but I like it a lot. And I think you could do that and carry it forward even further with more of those types of effects, volumetric fog and God rays and all the kind of bells and whistles that they do. Um,
Well,
I,
that
I
well,
think there's a lot of meat still on this bone.
and because it's not just that it's like that they'll have stuff that's slightly out of view, unfocused, or um, just all of these little details you don't see in a lot of HD remakes of pixel art stuff. Um,
Well, I hope they keep up with this art style just to see like how it evolves, because like you said, there's each time they make a new game or a new engine, they're building upon it. So the fact that we're seeing it get better and better, I think, looking back at Dragon Quest 3, like I'm not going to sit here and tell the artist what to do, but if I was like in charge or something, I think what I might focus on for the next one is maybe finding a way to maybe improve the sprite work. Like I felt like there was just something. It was still good. I still enjoyed it, but it still had that just kind of tinge of like mobile sprite, you know, flash kind of look to the regular sprites. I don't even like. I couldn't even say what it is that they could do to make it better. Like, because obviously, they don't want to go 3D route because you're trying to keep that 2D aesthetic. But the background still had that 3D kind of. I don't know. There still seemed to be a little bit of a difference between the sprites and the world. I guess would be, kind of the point
That's
I'm
I,
getting
I
at.
think that's exactly what it is. It's the contrast between the way that the backgrounds were done and the way that the sprites were done. They just didn't quite feel like they were from the same universe.
Yeah.
well,
And I,
some of
I
the
think that's a
backgrounds are still
consistency issue.
polygons, and it does that can be a tiny bit jarring, I think.
Yeah, well, all of them are, right? Are there
Yeah.
any parts of the game that actually have just a 2D background? I think it's all 3D, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't think of like it all had like depth to it. So there's definitely, I guess that's part of it. Like the environments had the depth, like you had the incredible detail in the buildings. Like when you go into a place, like I'm always joking about the fireplaces and stuff, but when you see like the little details, like down to the stonework and little pots and pans and fun things, little wood piles next to it and stuff. Like you're looking at that, you're like, man, like the detail in the world is crazy good, but then you kind of but the characters aren't quite as detailed. Like they're still just that generic look, I guess. Maybe like if there's a way they could kind of put their own flair into it, maybe that's where I would be focusing on.
Well, maybe they could use voxel characters and
Oh,
almost like 3D dot game
yeah.
heroes did, but a more updated version of it. So they would actually have self shadowing and stuff that you could have
Oh,
a more modern
yeah.
look, and still retain the pixel aesthetic, but maybe have them either rotate in 3D or maybe do something like again to bring up Xenogears or Star Ocean. I think did the same thing, where there's 8 different directions they can be facing, right, and then they have a model for all 8 of those directions.
I was actually looking up pictures of Bravely Default 2. I guess technically it's 2. The one for Switch, which has it's kind of still like that 3DS, you know, pocket style,
But doll look.
doll look.
Yeah, the pointy feet.
Although it's but these ones are like in Bravely Default 2, they seem to be a little bit more detailed than the 3DS ones that you would see.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder how something like that, like maybe even making them I guess that's the problem though, is like when you start to get too detailed in the characters, if again like then the characters might stand out towards the environments where you're like, oh, they're clearly too detailed to be walking around where they are, sort of thing. So
Well,
Well,
you
that
start getting
just
away from the 2D aesthetic at that point too, because
yeah.
if you change the character models to like a Bravely Default style, now you have nothing left that's actually pixel art. Of course, it's all pixel art because it's being displayed on a monitor, and monitors are only capable of displaying pixels. But it's not a grid of cells that are
Yeah.
colored in that way that are meant to be like classic pixel art. So I do think that it's a difficult thing for them as artists to try to progress but not actually just jump to the next level of technology where they're like using polygons instead. And they've already done the backgrounds that are all polygons, so if we change the characters to all polygons too, aside from maybe voxels because they're cubical, um, you're going to end up with just maybe you just look at it and you're like, well, this is just a low fidelity 3D game.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you compare this to Octopath 2, the sprites in Octopath 2, I don't know what the right word. The sprites aren't made up of as many sprites as in Dragon Quest 3. They're a lot more detailed. There's a lot more features you can see. Whereas you look at something like Octopath 2, and it is a bit more of that Super NES style. Where it is a bit more, you can't see visible mouths and all that stuff. So I think when you start getting more detailed with sprites, you do lose a lot of that chunkiness.
Well, Octopath is funny too because you could see the difference just between your character and the enemies, because the enemies are kind of like a more painted detail.
They're huge.
They're
I mean, yeah,
huge,
the
and you're
big
just a little guy.
enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really, really detailed pixel art.
That's just
But
kind
yeah,
of like one
I
of
agree. You do lose. You know what it reminds me of, Daniel, that you're talking about is it reminds me almost of how older video game music is more memorable because they could only produce like 3 simultaneous tones, so they really
oh,
had to focus on melody. And so you can just hum stuff from Castlevania and Mega Man and Contra and just all these games, Mario and stuff from back in the day, and then you play something like Elden Ring, or you play something like the Xenoblade games, and you're like, the music's fantastic, and it's like, yeah, hum it, and you're just like, So there's something more memorable about simplicity that I think is in part what these games really appeal to in people.
one of the Game Boy was my first Nintendo system, and I've always been more of a handheld gamer. But even now, I have a heart. Like I love playing Game Boy games. Like music is a big part of any sort of game for me, and I have no issue going back to Game Boy Color games because they do have that very sort of chunky chiptune music. But then if I try and go back to anything on the Game Boy Advance, I struggle because it's almost like they've got too much to sort of play around with musically, and it just isn't as memorable as that as those older soundtracks.
It's funny you say that because that's one of the things. Like I've been playing a lot of GBA lately, and that's something that stood out for me is that it's like, why isn't the music as good? Like I'm looking at like it's like the most beautiful pixel artwork. Like doesn't matter what. Like I'm playing Fire Emblem, I'm playing Metroid. Like I was even playing like Mother 3, and I'm just looking at it. I'm like, man, like I didn't have a GBA when it was at the time of release, but now going back to it, I'm just like, this is like amazing pixel artwork. Like I can't believe I missed this stuff back then. I was too busy playing 3D games on
I
PlayStation. But
think there was something funny with the Game Boy Advanced sound chip where it
yeah,
was it's like it's got this very sort of tinny sound to it.
yeah, it was like a whine. I was like, even
Yeah,
now, I'm playing like Metroid Fusion, and I'm like turning down the volume because I'm like, there's like this screech or something that's going on in the background. Like I can't. It's
trying to
driving me
play
nuts.
Aria of Sorrow, which is like my one white whale in the Castlevania series, and even playing on the collection, it's still just doesn't sound right to make it enjoyable for long periods of time.
Yeah. Now I don't remember in DQ3. Could you change it from the orchestral back to the original music, or was it just orchestral?
I don't know.
I didn't even look. I was so enjoying the kind of like the bombastic
Oh,
orchestra.
look,
I didn't
just
even.
actually having.
I think I checked the settings and I don't think it was in there. I'm not 100% sure on that,
Yeah,
but I think I did poke around and that was it.
yeah. I feel like it would have been mentioned by like I've never heard anyone talk about the options. So because that's one of the things in the Pixel remasters is I'm pretty sure you have choices of different music settings. So I'm kind of again. I guess with DQ they probably uh, for licensing reasons probably are more restricted than Final Fantasy necessarily. Could be making that up, but I know it's a little bit. I'm sure dealing with Sugiyama or whatever his name was probably harder than dealing with Uematsu.
Yeah, I'm not sure how his estate is. Look, I'm just happy we've got an orchestral. Like the
I like
MIDI
that they kept.
renditions are not great.
Well, I love how they kept a lot of the DQ like sound effects and stuff, like the like opening treasure chests and when the battle systems start and that sort of thing. Like it felt very DQ. You know.
I mean, the waking up from an inn,
Yeah.
just sticks with me forever.
Although when I was playing in Draki mode, I wasn't going to the inn all that often anymore. I was living life in the one HP era.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no
Actually,
need. Just wait until you level up and then go back to 1 HP.
Yeah,
that was a big change from because that never used to happen. When you leveled up, you didn't heal right away.
Oh yeah,
So
it wasn't there in the
that
wow.
version.
yeah, so that makes things a lot easier, especially like because with the way I played the game was basically to commit Metal Slime genocide. Once I discovered where they were, I'm like, yep, I am just spending the next hour or so here, just
I
leveling up all my classes so I can reset.
I tried doing that, but I it just never felt efficient. It took I'd
Well,
get the metal slimes like maybe 10% of the time, and then they'd always run before I could even attack. So I don't know how you're able to do that.
okay, so basically the way I was doing it, especially when you get to Alphengard and you've got that island, go to the island, use whistle to find a
Hmm.
fight.
Yep, yep,
If there weren't any metal babbles, I run from the fight right away and just keep repeating until I got a metal babble fight. And
yeah.
then because the other way I broke the game was the monster wrangler class with pylon, and if you have two classes running that, it's just you just run through every battle because the way monster pylon works is the more monsters you find, the stronger that gets. So that's basically the
Oh,
sole attack I
okay.
was using for the rest of the game. Um, like I just had it like this formula down where I could just as soon like usually if I was lucky and I got two or three metal babbles, I'd probably be able to guarantee I kill one. Um, So just basically, you do an hour of that. You've got a character to level 30, and then you just reset them and just build your classes up that way. Oh look, this is as soon as I find a way to break a game, it's just I am all in, just destroying it. I remember Bravely Second, and as soon as I figured out which classes I needed to just maximize XP growth and leveling up other classes, that was the first thing I did.
My favorite game breaking thing that I found was in Final Fantasy VIII. There's an island. There's actually two islands. There's it's called the Island of Hell and the Island of Heaven, or something to that effect. And they're the westernmost island on the game map and the easternmost. And there's the way it works with I guess it's Quitus, is that she has an auto kill attack when her HP is low enough. Like it triggers the special attack. So what I would do is I get her down to nothing, and then there's one of the GFs. You get to the point where you can level up something where there's no there's no warm up period. Like as soon as the battle starts, you get to do the first move. So I would basically go to this thing that had the biggest they had like level 100 monsters on these islands. They were the most difficult monsters in the game. So I would just go there, but then one shot them, and within like an hour, I had 3 of my characters at max HP because like the XP that you're getting right away, and the whole everyone that was in the fight gets all the XP, right? So jokes on me though is that a lot of most of the enemies in the game were tied to whatever level you were. So I don't know how easy it made the game for me at that point, but my teenage self, or it's probably a teenager still at that point, was pretty amused with myself at the time that I figured that out. So
have you played 4 Heroes of Light?
Not yet. It's on my backlog for this year.
That one levels up with you, so you can get to a position where you absolutely ruin the game for yourself. And some of the special dungeons you cannot do because the enemies are now too strong for you to handle.
Yeah.
Which I almost couldn't finish that game because of just I'd leveled up to the point that the end boss was now too strong. Which I'm like, that's not fair.
Yeah. Well, Rich, has this experience in any way motivated you to play any other Dragon Quest, or will this be the last one on your backlog for some time to come?
I don't know. I could be motivated to play 1 and 2, especially if it's for a game club, but we'll see.
Yeah, it was. I guess that's with me is that I've played a lot of Dragon Quest, but I haven't necessarily finished as many as I'd like. I think I've started 5, started 7, started 11, but just never got to the finish line in those ones. I did get to the finish line on the first Dragon Warrior, the original, just because it's not that long of a game, and I forced myself to do it. But I can definitely, I could say with certainty that I would not have finished DQ3, I don't think, without the RPG Club. I probably would have put it on the back burner. I was just sitting there like, no, like everyone here's finishing it. I can't be the one that screws off and gets lazy. I gotta fight this through, because I had the kind of the same thing where I got to like 80%. I think I was almost the same point as you. It's like I defeated Bearmos. I was like, oh, this is great. This was a fun time. And then I'm like, oh, there's more to this game. I
think the problem with that is because you beat the boss and then it's like, no, there's a whole other world. And so you sort of think, what, that I have to go through that all again, where it's like, look, it's only another extra maybe 10 hours, if that.
It wasn't an extra 10 for me, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I just bombed through that in a couple hours.
On the subject of the club, there's a word for that where like we all enable each other, I guess. I think that's what's going on here.
Trauma bonded to one another.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wasn't intending to play this until the club. I picked it up because it's Dragon Quest, and I've got a sickness where I have to buy games even though I don't play the stupid things. But like, I'm glad we did this because it got me to replay the game.
What is
Did you?
assured mutual destruction? That's another way
There you
to.
go.
Yeah.
Did you do the post game at all, Daniel?
No, didn't touch it. I wanted
Yeah, I
to,
did.
but I'm like, look, I finished a week or two ago, and then Xenoblade X was on the horizon, and I'm like, yeah, no. That's all the Switch is going to be for the next couple of weeks, months.
I know. David
Maybe.
shot down my hopes and dreams when he said that the next game was going to be Fire Emblem instead of Xenoblade X. I feel like it's a personal attack. It is a personal attack, is it not, David?
I've had my share of Xenoblade. They've burned me 2 or 3 times at this point, and it's the old what's the term? Shame on fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
I'm American, sir. I believe that it's fool me once, shame
Yeah.
on you. Fool me twice, you're not going to fool me again.
Yeah.
I believe that's the American version.
Yeah. Which is
I still,
the official version at this point. I'm sure, but
Indeed.
I still think you need to do Torna. Torna would sell you on it because
now,
it's
yeah.
20 hours.
If I was gonna play Xenoblade, it would be Torna because, like, I love 2. I still enjoyed 2, but the first of the Xenoblade, the structure of the combat requiring you to fight in a certain very like formulaic way just sucked the life out of me. So I couldn't get past the halfway point. And then it was something similar to in Xenoblade 3 where I was just like, this combat is so boring. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I think I got to the big I'm pretty sure I guess I'm not going to spoil Xenoblade 3 for anybody, but there was a point, I think like chapter 8 or 9 or something like that, where there's like this big moment that reveals something about the world, and I'm like, yeah, it's nice. I don't care anymore.
There's only 7 chapters in the game, David.
Oh, is there only 7? Maybe I was at 5 then. I was at I would say the 3/4 point. I'm pretty sure because I remember I hit that point and I was telling Casey like I'm tapping out, and he's like, "You're almost done," and I'm like, "No, I'm good."
You're like,
The
no,
the
you're
good
wrong. I am done.
Yeah.
the good thing about Torna is it's 20 hours long and there's only 3 playable characters, so it's not as overly complicated as all the other ones. And the main character is the most likable character in all of
She's
Xenoblade.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
she's
technically,
perfect.
I tried playing Xenoblade X and almost went blind trying to read the text. So
It's a lot better. They've improved that.
yeah.
Yeah, being blind is better, David. Try it.
Yeah. I was like, I've never needed glasses in my life, but I need to play
Worked
this
well
game
for
with a
Ortega.
telescope. So, oh god, I'm glad they fixed it. It does. Can you actually read the text in handheld mode?
In handheld? Oh, I
Yeah.
don't know. Good God. Can that game run in handheld mode? I feel like it would light on fire in my hands.
That's quite possible.
But I hope that they do a Dragon Quest V remake because I think that would be a very good game club for everyone.
I'd love to see him go all the way through 7. I think it'd be great.
Yeah,
It's probably a pipe dream, but it'd be cool.
Hey, if people, it's all about those sales. If people keep buying them, they'll keep making them. You can guarantee
even if
that.
they just did a port of the 3DS version of 7, because that's very good. That fixes, because you want to talk about slow starts. Like 7, what is it? I think in the PlayStation 1 version, it's like an hour or 2 before you actually get to combat for the first
I heard
time.
3.
Yeah, so it's a long game, and this is a game that came out on the PlayStation, I think the same day the PlayStation 2 came out.
It was very late in the life cycle.
Yeah.
I think it was one of those staggered release things. I don't think it had a simultaneous worldwide release, but yeah, it was a late PlayStation 1 game, and I know a lot of people were unhappy because they kept essentially the 2D style, and people were like, "No, this is the PlayStation era. This is 3D. Why are we doing this?" But the real ones know. Daniel, you know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was Dragon Quest 3, our first RPG club. I'm happy that we're continuing on, even though we've definitely got a fork in the road when it comes to the RPG club. I know Rich and Daniel are joining me with some Fire Emblem I'm always forgetting the name. Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia Echoes. We're heading over to the 3DS for that, and Will is. You're still in good company though, Will, with Xenoblade X, because both Casey and Jordan are driving me nuts. In our texting, they keep sending stuff, and I'm like, no, I'm not buying this game. Stop texting me pictures.
Tell them to text me. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll both be dropping stuff in the Discord soon. I don't even know if they realized I opened that channel yet. I forgot to tell them. So I'm sure there'll be kind of like a mini club going on with Xenoblade X. So for anyone who wants to play a Fire Emblem or Xenoblade X, there's something for everybody in the Discord. So yeah, come on out to that. Again, go to thirstymage.com and click on the Discord link, and it'll send you off to our channel. So. But yeah, I want to thank Rich, Daniel, and Will for all joining me in the club. It's a lot of fun playing with you guys. Like I said, sometimes you need to drag my my fatigued short attention span body across the finish line for some of these RPGs, and so I'm happy to have seen the end of DQ3 and have been able to add it to my backlogged finish list. So I thank you guys for that.
Well,
I think we can.
Time. Thank you.
I think we can mostly thank Dracky Mode for that.
Indeed. Yes. The real MVP, Dracky Mode.
Yeah. So here's hoping that Dracky Mode lives on in future DQ remakes. If they want to keep that money flowing, they got to keep Dracky Mode going. So, yeah. So yeah, I want to thank everyone for listening to our retrospective on Dragon Quest III. You can look forward to, I'm sure, Xenoblade X episodes and Fire Emblem episodes in the future. And yeah, I don't even think we got to the modern era in our RPG moments yet. So there's another future episode on its way. So
episode to talk about the most memorable Yokai Watch moments.
Yeah, well, Paige will need to be there for that episode then, because she's the only one. I will stand
for Yokai Watch alongside Paige.
See you Australians. I don't know what's going on down there.
What is it? Tokyo Mirage Sessions F.E. Sharp as well, right?
Oh, look. We'll get into that when we do the Fire Emblem episode, because it is probably my favourite Fire Emblem game.
It's my second favourite game to dunk on. So,
look. I understand dunking on Pocket Edition, but I will not stand for dunking on Tokyo Mirage Session. I think that game's near flawless. It's probably my favourite HD Atlas game.
Cool. Well, yeah, I guess that will do it for this episode. Thanks for everyone for listening, and we'll see everyone out at the next Thirsty Mage. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.